Hey guys, and welcome back to Ask an Autistic. My name is Jessica Leichtweisz, and I'm the CEO of Hope Education Services. I've worked with kids with autism for 13 years, and what that makes me an expert in is verbal behavior in education and in strategies to help kids learn to talk, strategies on help parents with behavior, help with family routines, eating, whatever you need to know. But what that doesn't make me an expert in is autism, because I don't have autism. I can't tell you what it's like to live with autism. But today I've assembled a panel of 6 autistic adults that can tell you the ins and outs of what it's like to experience living with autism. So every week, parents get a chance to come on, get their questions answered directly from the people who know the most about autism. So at this time, I want to invite anyone who is on the call to unmute and ask the panelists a question.
Okay, so my question is around social skills. And I know that we've talked about this before, but more specifically during COVID times, since we can't get the kids together for play dates and, we're really kind of isolated in the situation. So, as schools start to open back up, or, if schools don't open until next year, do you guys have any tips, or for those of you that have worked in schools or are working in schools, do you have any tips for what I can do to work with my son to, maintain social skills he had already learned with other kiddos, or just any skills that I could teach him to prime him for when he goes back to school so that he can practice those skills?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Lisa. And, for me, I find teletherapy is working really well in terms of the education. Like, I find that when kids have a really good therapist, that they're not falling behind in terms of education. But we know that realistically, most kids learn a lot more probably from their peers than they do from their teachers. So that aspect has been taken away, and it's been hard to replicate on the computer. What I've had from my experience is that working with older kids, it's a little bit easier. So if a child's older and they have the ability to connect to a Zoom, they have the ability to play games, what I've found is that playing games has been really, really effective. Like over even just, you can go on a Zoom just like we are now, and you can share the screen, give remote control, doing things like checkers. I found websites that have like online Monopoly, chess, but those are things that are obviously better for older kids. You could do tic-tac-toe, and you can do Connect 4. That's really helpful. I've even done things like I've had like slumber parties or pizza parties with some of the early intervention age kids that I work with, where they were watching a movie with some of their peers, and it's hard to know whether or not they fully understand that their peers on the other end of it and they're really interacting. It is very hard to replicate those face-to-face interactions. And so, for parents, I've, said to parents, it's obviously a personal choice, but if you are, comfortable with another family, if you guys are taking the same levels of precautions, if you're comfortable doing play dates, that's certainly something you could do. There are some online social groups, but I know your son's a little bit younger, so it's very hard at that age. And I do want to acknowledge that the kids are missing out on that, and it's important for their development. Does anyone have any strategies and things that are working for them? I know, Michelle, you work in a school. Anything that's working for you? And Lisa, is your school still all remote? Is it not back in session yet?
Yeah, they're not anticipating our kiddos going back to after January.
Okay. Yeah, so New Jersey, I'm in New Jersey, and a lot of schools opened up, and actually as of yesterday, the number was 22 districts shut back down. So it seems like this is an important topic for discussion that is really important we explore together, because it looks like this may be the continuation for at least the rest of this calendar year. But Michelle, do you have any strategies and things that are working for you? I know you were working remote. He's so cute.
Yeah, so with it's been, I'll be honest with you, it's actually been kind of hectic. As of this week, I actually unfortunately been doing it from home as well right now, because my school district, in the school building that I specifically work in, due to with having some individuals with positive cases and stuff, we had to be closed now for a week and a half. So I have to actually do it remotely from home for now, this weekend to next week. So like what we do, we try to do a lot of like group things together online through Zoom and stuff. Like kind of like more like play skills together, like with where like we have like Play-Doh time, or like where we have like all these like sensory kind of times, and like especially where we have our like morning meetings in the classroom, like through Zoom and stuff, where like we would have like a lot of songs and stuff, and like have chances where we would do like with working on like greetings, like saying like hi, like waving hi to a kid on the camera and stuff, or like if they are able to say someone's name like for a greeting, they would be able to say like hi Michelle, or like, you know, or even using their ACC device just to say hello and stuff, because that's any form of communication, you know, to encourage. But what else? If you feel comfortable too, like about with like play dates and stuff, like for your child, it's different for everybody, because what's been going on with me is that we're hybrid. So like we have students who have been doing remote learning since day one, since the beginning of the school year, and I have students who have been coming in person. So it does vary family to family, and I'm working at the elementary grade level, so I have like from like first to third graders, so they're like the early age as well. It just depends with how you feel about with your child, like if you feel like in the way that you want to like have some time for like to have play dates, because I understand with the social interactions right now is very limited with everything that's going on. But definitely with keeping up with skills at home, absolutely, like anything that like your child enjoys, like either like Play-Doh, or like with playing with like trains, or like for example like that, any just like interaction is like the key, even if it's like with you, or like, you know, with but with other kids and stuff, like we do what we can and stuff, and that's the best that I can give for with this one.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Michelle. And so one of the things too, Lisa, and I see Carolina's putting in the chat that it's hard to get some kids to look at the computer, and that's true. So I've done things like Michelle, also like peekaboo with the kids. Having to do peekaboo is actually like kids tend to really like that. And you can do it side by side where they can see each other. So that's actually one thing I've done. The other thing is that you can do socially distanced play dates. And actually it's not as hard as you would think for kids. So it is hard if they will run up to each other and touch each other, and they're not going to follow instructions. But otherwise, like even at a young age, like I've done things where they're doing freeze dance. You know, freeze dance is a good one to do. If you're doing like, you can do some sort of like races where each kid has their own thing. Yeah. Where maybe, or a beanbag toss where you have two beanbags and kids are tossing the beanbags into the baskets. Or I did like that like ring game, or they're racing to the bottle. Like remember we used to do those games in gym and school. That's actually a good option. Even something like parachute, if the parachute, the kids are actually 6 feet apart. So if you would do something like that, there are things you can do to do socially distanced play dates. I've done bubbles with bubble wands where like kids have their blocks.
That's another one.
Sidewalk chalk, having kids do sidewalk chalk together and just having them in their little box. But again, that does require the child has an understanding of following instructions and the understanding of that they're supposed to stay away from other kids. There is always the risk with kids that don't understand that they're going to come interact with each other. So those are things that, you know, you have to keep in mind as a parent. But I have found that there are really ways that you can socially distance and have kids. The other thing is just kicking a ball back and forth. Like if the kid will actually not touch it, then, you know, and some kids, sometimes it's a bad idea because there are a lot of kids, especially on the spectrum, that will pick up the ball and then put it in their mouth, or pick it up the ball and lick it. So that's obviously, you have to know your child. But if your child will kick a ball back and forth, it's probably very low risk if they're just kicking the ball outside. So doing things like that can be really, really, really helpful. And then the other thing about it is like even doing like a basic yoga with kids. I've done just a lot of really
Yeah.
action games, you know, doing the penguin shuffle with the kids, which is a really cool, you know, YouTube video, doing shake the sillies out, for at least I know your son is like at a younger age, where you can do those things. Even just doing a circle time where you're having kids read the stories and doing art projects socially distanced. And you can have kids together on a play date and they're doing a really, really fun art project, but they're doing things separately. You know, in terms of kids can play with shaving cream together, where you can go to a park and, you know, maybe one kid has their blanket and the other kid has their blanket or towel. And then if you get a big garbage bag, black garbage bag, and you put shaving cream on it, and then the kids can play with that. So that's parallel play. It's not interactive play. So that's still going to be limited, but it is better than no social interactions. So there's just tons of things that you could do and tons of things that you could keep up with. Yeah, Jeff, that's a great idea. Bill Harley is, I've been using a lot of his songs this week, especially. So Jeff, do you want to unmute and share some of your ideas and strategies? And I know I'm talking more than I normally would, but since I've been doing this, Lisa, normally on these calls, I talk very little. So if you're watching this for the first time, usually I reserve for the panelists. But since I know I'm probably the one who's working the most hands-on, with the most number of kids hands-on, I felt like this might be a good question for a professional as well as other of the panelists as well. But Jeff, do you want to unmute and share some of your ideas?
By the way, for those of you that don't know, Bill Harley is actually from my hometown of Seekonk, Massachusetts. So, okay. But yeah, I mean, like doing like maybe playing like a song from like someone, say like Bill Harley or even Raffi. I mean, I don't know if anyone here grew up with Raffi in the 1990s or something, but you know, play those kind of songs. And like, you know, if you're going to have kids come over, just, you know, spread them out, put them in like, you know, little like socially distant circles and place like a boom box in front of them. And then say to the kids, like, you know, we're going to play a song from Bill Harley, and you play the song and then you instruct the kids to dance within their circle, and whoever stays in their circle the most will win something, and someone who steps out of their circle doesn't get anything. So it's those kind of little things like that. And then you could also the kid can also dance at home, even, you know, even at home, you know, if they're not being very socially active, they could you could play something on your laptop and the kid can dance, and there could be another laptop where the child's friend is, and they can and they can see the kid dancing, and then the kid on the Zoom can also join in. So that's a tactic that parents can use right there.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. That's really great advice. You know, and I think it's more important than ever that parents are playing with kids. And I know as parents, like you have more roles than you've ever had before. Like all of a sudden you're a teacher, a speech therapist, occupational therapist, psychologist, professional wine connoisseur, and a bunch of other things, right? But it's also really important that you're playing with your child. I can't stress that enough, because a lot of times, you know, parents are so focused on doing the lesson plans that teachers have, but then you're not playing. The reality of it is kids are going to learn more from playing than they probably are from worksheets. So, and your teacher might get mad at you for me saying that, get mad at me for saying this. But the reality of it is if you have to choose between playing trains with your child and doing a worksheet, teaching your child the colors and numbers and letters, I personally would say play trains with your kid. He's going to get more out of those social interactions. And, you know, the worksheet's not that important. So if you really have to make those choices, I would really work a lot on social interactions with your child. And this is the time where you have to be creative. And you may have to, as a parent, replicate those social situations the best way that you can for your child. So, you know, if your teachers are just bombarding you with like all these things, you know, most teachers are stressed and they're trying to figure out ways to make this work. But some teachers are doing a really good job of it, and some teachers are like doing the best they can, but just relying a lot on printing stuff up and then giving parents a lot of busy work to kind of fulfill the hours of the day. But, as a parent, you know your child best. And if your child isn't able to play with other kids, having those social interactions and getting on the floor and pretend you're the other kid, you have to replicate it the best way you can. Now, it's not going to be exactly the same as it would be if a child was playing with a peer, but in the same sense, actually, in some ways, it actually can be better. One of the arguments is when we're teaching functional pretend play is that adults are actually more patient. They'll wait for children more than kids are, so your child has a better chance to practice your skills. But I would just be playing most of the time and put the academics to the side. The academics are not that important right now. Your child is going to suffer a lot more if they're lacking play skills and social skills than if they're a little bit behind in their numbers and letters and reading and addition and multiplication. I mean, the reality of it is a lot of stuff that is still in the curriculum in schools. It's not important for anybody, never mind autistic children. Your kids don't need to learn how to do multiplication and division right now. They need to focus on their health, on their emotional well-being, their social well-being, and that's what's most important. So that's my personal opinion. I know probably a lot of teachers are not going to like that, but it is what it is. Share this video with them. Tell them I said it. Or don't, but do it anyway. So anyone else, any other panelists? I know Jesse's here, Kevin's here. We have a couple people who couldn't make it tonight. Anyone have anything that they wanted to add to this topic?
I work with people who have disabilities, but they're much older. They're well past the age of 18 most of the time. And as the activities leader, I've found that hiking is a safe and socially distanced activity where people can enjoy themselves. So maybe not a hike because your child is pretty young, Lisa, but perhaps a walk on some flat path like Valley, things of that nature. And also having your child join an activity that he likes to do on his own time would be also beneficial, and maybe involve one of his peers, because I remember I went on play dates that my mother set up, and to be honest, I was often going through the motions. I did not want to be there. I'd rather be at home playing Nintendo games or something. And if it's something that your child would love doing it by himself, then he'd enjoy doing it with somebody else, with one of his peers. And for a second play date, he can do something that his peer loves to, either through Zoom or in person, if you can remain socially distanced.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Jesse. And then on that note too, scooters, tricycles, a bike, depending upon the age of the child, those are all things that kids can do. And especially like even if you just take sidewalk chalk and you make like a pretend road, kids can drive their cars on their road. You can put a stop sign, you can practice stop and go. And again, it's gonna take, especially if your child's younger, and like it's gonna take more than one adult, an adult next to the child to keep the kids apart, but it can be done. And I've seen it done effectively. So that's something to be said. So thank you, Jesse. And I've been doing a lot of hiking on this break. Like I've always loved hiking, and so I was kind of went into that with thankfully I like hiking, and it was always a part of my lifestyle, but I've done it more now than ever. I actually took my dog hiking earlier today. We went yesterday, and I've been doing hiking in groups, and for me, I'm being a little bit less cautious, honestly, than some people are. So I'm comfortable talking to my friends and hiking next to my friends and talking. But there are people that were on the hikes that were not comfortable, and they just stayed 6 feet apart from everybody else. So it was really just left to everybody's whatever people are comfortable with. But so that's something that you can consider. It's a really good idea. Kevin, is there anything you wanted to add to this topic?
Well, I think I agree with what everyone else has pretty much already said. I would say look to set up some like play dates that are like, especially ones that are outdoors that allow for social distancing, because I think they're perfectly safe. And I would say, look, it's especially a good time now to do that while the weather is still warm and nice. What's going to be really tough is when we get into winter and it gets cold, and it's tougher to really do those outside social events. But I would say, yes, outdoor social events with a small group of people, I think is definitely safe to do. And so I would suggest looking to set those up, and that's, yeah, pretty much what I would say is, I think look to take advantage of doing that as much as possible, is pretty much what I would say is the best way I can think of keeping your child actively active and socially active and engaged, during this, during these tough times where it's tougher to really keep them actively socially engaged, that's pretty much how I best see able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. I mean, and then if you really, like I said, if you really are not comfortable with a small play date outdoors, then keeping it as best as you can social distance. And we know with kids, there's going to be a risk because it's not going to be perfect. So if you're like, hey, listen, that sounds wonderful, but my child like walks up to people and licks them, which we know a lot of our kids do, or my kid puts everything in his mouth, or like, that's just not going to happen for my family, then I understand that. Like, and I want to acknowledge this is hard. There is no easy answer. This is not a like, okay, well, you know what, you have, you want to teach your child to write the letter A, just get tracing paper and you're going to do it that way. There is no easy solution for this. This is something that everyone has to just be creative and do the best they can and take the precautions they want and really think outside the box. So Lisa, I hope that helped. Did anything you heard there, is there anything that you're willing to try that you hadn't thought of or done before from what we said?
Yeah, we're on the side of things where my son is immunocompromised, so we won't be doing anything in person right now, unfortunately. But definitely, Michelle, you had some great suggestions for like virtual play dates. So I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, because the kids are always on Zoom all day. And I think that's the tough thing, is asking another parent to jump on another Zoom call. I think that's where my hesitation as a parent has come from. Like, I don't know if other parents would be open to it, but definitely worth an ask, to get the kids together.
Just order, like if you go on Amazon and you order like art project kits, so kids have the same art project kit, or even just dinner time, like just having like a kids, like at dinner time, just having like a Zoom available, or even just movies. That way it's like not stressful. Kids can just watch movies together. And there's only so much they're going to get out of that, but it is better than nothing. And for some kids, it may not be much better than nothing. I'm going to be honest with you. It's really going to depend upon the child. But it's the best we can do in a really crappy situation. That's the reality. And that's what I just want to acknowledge for parents, is that, not sitting here saying, we can 100% replicate social interactions the way they were or the way hopefully they're going to go back to. But we just have to do the best we can. But thank you so much for asking that question. Are any other parents on that have a question that they would like to have answered tonight? Okay. If not, I'm actually going to end this a little bit early tonight. So we're going to do an abbreviated version of this webinar. I really hope that this helps. I come on here every week. All of our panelists come on here every week. They're so generous. They don't, we're not getting paid for this. People ask me, are you paying the panelists? I actually pay to do this. I don't get paid for doing this either. And, we just do this as a gift to people because we want to make people's lives better. And, we love you. We are so grateful for you that you come up here every week. If you're watching the videos, we know a lot of people do. We're grateful that you watch these in record mode. We'd love to have you on. If you want to come on, get your questions answered, head over to my website, hopeeducationservices.com, under events. You can come. This is free. Thank you, Carolina, for being here. Thank you for sharing. Yes, it's always available to everybody. We do this every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And we started it during the pandemic to give parents a way of getting some questions answered. And it was supposed to be a one-time event. We then made it a two-time event, and now it is a weekly event. So we'd love to see you. Thank you guys. Have an amazing night. Thanks again to all the panelists, and we'll see you next week.